Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the EKG case for the week of February 5th, 2012. I've got a fun case for you this week. It's a simple case. I'm only going to show you one EKG, but it was actually a case that had a lot of people confused. This is a gentleman that presented to the emergency department after having a few near syncopal episodes. He said he felt some, I don't know, palpitations, not really chest pain, but just palpitations during these episodes, just preceding these episodes. So, of course, you think about arrhythmia, and of course, you've got to get your 12-lead EKG, hook them up to the monitor. His vitals are pretty good, but here's a 12-lead EKG, and it really had a lot of people confused because as you look at this 12-lead EKG, what you obviously notice is that there's some irregularity, some funkiness, I think is a technical term, some funky stuff going on down there in that rhythm strip. Now, people look at this and they get a little bit confused, but it turns out that with most complicated rhythms, if you just break them up into pieces, in most cases, you really can figure things out. So let's take a close look at the rhythm first of all. You notice that there's a repeating pattern here. There's what appears to be a fairly normal beat, then a different beat, then normal, different, and so on. And this pattern appears to be continuing. You also notice, and hopefully this has popped into your head if you've been paying attention to the past couple of weeks of these cases of the week, that there is regular irregularity. In other words, well, there's a normal beat, and then an early beat, right? Normal, early. And that pattern is very typical. In fact, if you were to get calipers and map them out, you'd find that the distance between those two beats is the same as the distance between those two beats, and so on. But you would also find that the distance from there and then to there, this beat actually comes early, and the distance between these two complexes is the same as that, and so on. So the bottom line is, this is a regularly irregular pattern. And as you recall from previous weeks, when you see something that's regularly irregular, there's two things that should pop into your differential. Number one is Mobitz. Is it Mobitz 1 or Mobitz 2? The second possibility is there premature complex? Are there premature complexes going on? Well, you can quickly rule out the possibility of Mobitz because if you look here, there's no P wave. There's no PR that's staying constant. There's no PR that's increasing. There's simply no P wave at all. So this is not Mobitz. It cannot be Mobitz. And that leaves you to conclude that this is probably some type of premature complex right in there that's happening. Now, what type of premature complex is this? Well, there's no P wave preceding the QRS complex, and so this is not a PAC. And furthermore, you notice that it's a relatively narrow complex, and also you notice that right after the QRS complex, there's a little blip, which consistently occurs in all of those premature complexes. There's a little blip right there also. These are retrograde P waves, and what that means, there's no preceding P wave with normal PR. It's narrow. There's a retrograde P wave. There's three things telling you that this is a junctional premature complex. So what that means is that what you're looking at is a junctional trigeminy. It's that simple. So this is apparently sinus rhythm with junctional trigeminy. So if you've never heard of that before, now you have. Every third beat is a premature junctional complex, so this is quite simply referred to as junctional trigeminy. So first of all, let's just write that down so we don't forget that. Junctional trigeminy. So that's the first part of the rhythm. Now let's go back and take another look here. Okay, so the other thing that I just want to add a 12-lead EKG in a rhythm strip, this lead is run simultaneously with this, simultaneously with this, simultaneously with this. What that means is that this complex is the same all the way up and down. So these are all junctional complexes there, okay? And the reason I point this out is because when people were looking at this lead, they weren't sure whether this is the normal complex or that's the normal intrinsic complex. Well, if from the rhythm strip that you know that this is the normal intrinsic complex and this is the junctional beat, what that means is that these are all junctional complexes. So we'll put a little J there. And these are all the intrinsic, the normal complexes, or in other words, the sinus complexes. So we'll just put an S wave, an S there. So these are the normal sinus complexes. But you know what? There's something a little bit unusual about those sinus complexes. What you notice is that there's a very short PR there. All right. Now, I seem to remember hearing that when you've got a short PR, there's two things that you need to think about in that differential. Well, one possibility for a short PR is a junctional complex. All right, so let's go back. Are those junctional complexes? No, we already established it that these are normal sinus complexes. Those are not junctional. That there's a P wave preceding the QRS complex there. And the other thing that gives you a short, whoop, I'm going the wrong way. The other thing that gives you the short PR is WPW. That's the most common thing people think about. So let's see if we see any delta waves in there. I don't know. That doesn't really look like a delta wave. But you know what? Delta waves are not always present in every lead. Sometimes you need to look in specific leads for the delta waves. So if you're looking for possible WPW and you've been tipped off to that because there's a short PR, look in all of the leads. Okay, look in all 12 leads for delta waves. And in this particular 12 lead EKG, when you look in all the leads, it turns out that, well, over there in V5 and V6, those are really prominent delta waves. You know, if we blow those up, you see a nice P wave, and then whoop, and it goes right up into that QRS complex. Very, very nice delta wave. You can't draw it any better than that. And so this patient actually has WPW, and WPW was missed on the initial interpretation. The formal interpretation, it was missed. Why was it missed? It was missed because people were simply looking for delta waves in a couple of leads, and you don't see delta waves in a couple of leads. You see delta waves sometimes just in those anterolateral leads. Sometimes they're just in the limb leads. There's no rhyme or reason to it. The key thing is, whenever you see a short PR, you've got to look in all 12 leads for delta waves, because in some cases, just like in this case, you're only going to see nice delta waves in a couple of leads. It's a really important miss that occurred initially when the EKG was first evaluated. This is normal sinus rhythm with WPW and also junctional trigeminy. That's a big deal. This patient was having near syncopal episodes, and the fact that he's got underlying WPW means he needs to be admitted and go for ablation therapy. And eventually, the EKG was finally properly interpreted about a day or two after his admission. Fortunately, he got admitted to the hospital, and somebody else took a look at the 12 lead and said, you know what, he's got WPW. He needs to go for ablation. But had that not been picked up, he could have easily been discharged home and had a fatal arrhythmia. So, very simple. A few key take-home points here. Number one, once again, when you see that a rhythm is regularly irregular, look for Mobitz and look for premature complexes. That's your differential. Takeaway point number two. Complex rhythms can be very easy when you break them down. All right? So you just break them down into sections. There's a section, there's a section, there's a section, and so on. And then takeaway point number three. When you see a short PR, there's two things that cause short PRs. Sometimes junctional complexes can give you a P than QRS with a very short PR, and perhaps more commonly, short PR is associated with WPW. And the final take-home point is, whenever you're considering the possibility of WPW, don't just look for delta waves in one or two leads. Look in all of the leads. All right, so whenever you see a short PR, look in all 12 leads for delta waves, because sometimes you're only going to see delta waves in just one or two leads. If you don't do that, you're going to miss WPW, and that, folks, that can be deadly. And it could have been deadly in this patient's case. But fortunately, it was picked up. So I thought that was kind of an interesting 12-lead EKG, not a straightforward rhythm, but you know what? When you break things down, EKGs can be very, very simple and life-saving. And that's why I have fun with EKGs, and hopefully you are too. All right, that's it for this week. I will talk to you later. Take care.